We're back on the Scaling Secrets podcast, here to talk about EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System, and so much more with Amy Holtz, who is a successful entrepreneur. Amy has over 3 decades of experience leading and growing her own multi-million-dollar businesses, including Party City's largest franchise operation. And Amy helps entrepreneurs, investors in the greater Philadelphia, New York City, and Israel cure their biggest frustrations and grow their businesses. So we are going to find out about what Amy's done with nonprofits, find out about predictive index, EOS, traction specialists, and so much more, overcome some challenges, get to some business goals, exciting stuff. So Amy, glad to be speaking with you.
Robert, it's a pleasure to be here.
And a pleasure to have you. It is a two-way street, right? The feeling is mutual, as they say. And so we introduced you a little bit, hyped you up, but in your own words, what really has you excited, focused, passionate lately?
I think it's EOS. I really believe it's EOS. I've been blessed with a lot of professional success, but like every leader, I made a lot of mistakes. And I really believe every mistake I made, I could have avoided had I had EOS. And when I discovered it, I didn't know there was such a thing. I always say that when I growing a business is a lot of fun till it's not. And then it becomes overwhelming and it becomes exhausting. And I didn't know there was another formula. So when I found EOS and I actually ran a nonprofit on it, I really discovered it was the first time I ran my business instead of my business running me. And I was so excited that there was such a possibility and such a system that I decided to become an EOS implementer. And I watch my teams and the companies I work with transform, and it's an absolute privilege.
Wonderful. And you hear about again and again all these successful companies who have implemented EOS and to get that predictability. And what's great about it is, from what little bit I know, it has a lot of the components. When like you listen to a podcast like this one and you hear just like a little piece of it, right? Like people talk about like vision and mission, and then people talk about like hiring good people. And sometimes that sort of podcast advice feels like whack-a-mole, right? Because you say, oh, I need to focus on the people, but then you say, well, I feel like something is still incomplete. And so as far as EOS and what it is there like a quick spiel about it, like an elevator pitch? If someone says, maybe I've heard about it, but I don't quite have a grasp, like what is EOS to begin with?
So EOS, it's a management system. So we often describe it as a way to manage all the human energy in your business. So there's two parts to the elevator pitch. The first is we deliver on what we call vision, traction, and healthy. So vision is getting everyone 100% on the same page with where the business is going and how it's getting there. So very often when I start with a team, there's not a lack of vision, but actually too much vision. So the CEO wants to expand to 5 continents. The COO wants some order in the business, and the CFO wants cash in the bank. So these 3 leaders are actually, they see something different and they're making decisions that conflict with each other because growth and cash may not be, symbiotic. So we have to get them seeing one common vision, everyone rowing in one direction. So that's vision. Traction is GSD, getting stuff done, creating accountability, focus, and discipline. So everybody's working on the right things and they're actually getting done. And healthy is what I actually think is the hardest part of my job, is creating a highly functioning, healthy leadership team. Because very often when I start, there's anger, there's passive aggression. Sometimes people don't trust each other. They can't stand each other. So we deliver on vision, traction, and healthy. We work with the leadership team, as goes the leadership team, so goes the business. So then we ultimately roll it down one layer at a time. But I think the bigger question that you just asked is, you feel like you're only getting a piece of a business when you talk about one of these podcasts, when you're just focusing on one thing. EOS starts with a model. And the model is a simple way of looking at all the moving pieces of your business. So the model is based on the discovery that every leader is juggling 136 issues at the exact same time. Does that sound like your day, Robert? Feel like
Of
you're juggling?
course,
I actually,
100%.
yeah. So I thought that was a little light, but let's say the 136 issues are actually accurate. What the discovery tells us is those 136 issues are really symptoms of a weakness in one of the 6 key components of your business. So if we could get the 6 key components of your business strong, then those 136 issues will fall into place. So I
Well,
bet you're saying, what are those 6 key components? Because I could solve many of your problems. Was that what
yes,
you were
I
thinking,
do
Rob?
want that. Instead of treating the symptoms, treat the root cause. It sounds like less pain overall.
Yes. Yeah. Well, you just brought up a point dealing with the root cause, which I'll address in a minute. But the 6 key components, the first is vision. Vision, getting everyone 100% on the same page with where we're going and how we're going to get there. You can't achieve a great vision without great people. So here we take Jim Collins' right people in the right seat and we define it for each company, because right people in right seats are different for every single business. Then data, that's the third key component. Data is running your business on facts, figures, and objective information, not ego, gut, and feelings, which very often drives decision making in entrepreneurial organizations. And the thing with data today is we're drowning in data. We have to boil our business down to a handful of numbers so we don't get stuck in analysis paralysis. So, what happens when you have a crystal clear vision? You have great people, you run your business on data, all your issues, all your problems become crystal clear and transparent. So, the first thing I'm going to say is something it took me 30 years to learn. You're always going to have issues, they never go away. The difference between great teams and average teams are great teams are solving new issues. Average teams, they're talking about the same issue for sometimes years. They don't solve it. They're just ruminating about the same thing. And then I like to say there's a spectrum of approach to issues. On one end of the spectrum is what I believe is the most common approach, which is prayer. Please, God, let this issue go away. Issues are like mushrooms. If you ignore them, they multiply and grow. So the other end of the spectrum is the EOS approach to issues, and that's our fourth key component, issues. We create an open, honest company where everyone in the business could raise their hand and say, I have an issue, and everyone has a system for solving it, which we call IDS, identify, discuss, solve, which is, Robert, what you talked about. Identify the root cause of the issue. Most people spend lots of time discussing, and discussing. Very rarely do they identify the root cause. So they're discussing the wrong issue, and very rarely do they come to a solve with a clear to do. So issues are about creating a company where everyone is open and honest and everyone knows how to IDS, identify the root cause, which is what you so wisely brought up. Then there's processes. Processes are about doing things the best and right way every single time, making your business scalable, easier to manage, and more profitable. So someone like me who's an entrepreneur, a big visionary, I don't really like processes. I, in fact, like to make it up as I go along. It's more challenging. But that's not how you scale. It's not wise. So processes, we document your core processes. We do checklists. We document the 20% of the steps that get you 80% of the way there. No big, 50-page manual that nobody reads. That's the fifth component, is processes. And the last component is traction. Traction is GSD, bringing that vision down to reality and executing on it every single day. So, Robert, have you heard of great ideas that never get executed?
Every single day. Yes.
Every single day. Well, they lack traction. Gino, the founder of EOS, likes to say vision without traction is simply hallucination. So those are the 6 key components of every business, and you need to be strong in all of them. So that's the
Wonderful. So
yeah.
yeah, we have vision, people, data, issues, process, traction, and I'm seeming smart, but I just right before the call I pulled up ChatGPT and I said, "Tell me about EOS," so that way we could reference it. So a little bit of cheating there, but like when you describe that, it seems to me, at least like as far as storing it in the blocks in my head, like vision and people seems to be like the setup, the foundation, and then like the data and the issues kind of seems to me like to be like the planning, and then the process and traction seems to be the taking action. And it's cool how it's in that order, because it feels like one leads to the next. That if you say, well, my business, like, it's all this chaos, if you just like start from that first step and then like kind of go through, you can really clean this up and as you said, like solve a lot of problems. And especially because there's like, you worry about whenever there's a framework, right, that you worry about the bloat of things. When someone says like, oh, the Six Sigma this or that, then you worry about, there's a lot of planning, meeting, strategizing, and what about taking action? So I love how it all leads to, well, hey, what are the problems? How will we solve it? And then actually take some dang action. I love it.
You hit on like five different amazing points. So first of all, just a little correction. We actually start with people and traction, not vision. Vision is a little, I love the vision part because it's a little more fun. But if you don't have the right people in place, you're not, first of all, you're going to create this vision. If the people are accountable for carrying out the vision aren't the ones making it, they're going to make it much bigger. They'll say, oh, 100 million in sales, but you need the guy who's going to be responsible for sales to actually be there. So we do people first, and we start to develop the habit of what we call rocks, which are 90-day goals, setting and hitting rocks, doing your weekly tasks. Because we have found you could do vision or traction first, but we have found that when you create a basic foundation of traction, you put a compelling vision on top of it, it goes faster. And the other point that you made is one of the reasons I love EOS is it's simple. And sometimes you might look at it and say, oh, this is so simple. My business is more complex than that. I started as a lawyer, and I quickly realized that the very smart lawyers make things simple. The not so smart lawyers, heretofore notwithstanding, you don't even know what they're talking about. So part of the genius in EOS is it's simple, but it's also, there's a lot of depth to it. And it does take some time in the beginning, but it all becomes habit and it saves you time. You're a million times more efficient. It works. That's why EOS is on fire, because so many businesses are having success with it. Thank God.
And you're so right that simplicity is undervalued, right? Some people hide behind the complexity, or there's all sorts of different sayings about like, if you can't explain it to a 5-year-old, you don't understand it yourself. And like once you've achieved mastery, then you could really explain these things in simple terms. And simplicity catches on. And it seems to me like a lot of it comes down to, people are really a mess to deal with, right? Because I come from a software background, right? And it's like you think, okay, I'm going to make this app or this program, and you explain it in plain English, but there's all sorts of ways it can go wrong. That's why bugs happen. And then you document what you program, but then you go back 6 months later, and if you didn't document it enough, then you don't even know what the heck happened. It's always imperfect. And you even mentioned there a little bit about like over documenting, and then it's even useless in a different way. So we have to navigate all of this different peopling. And I like how you said about how like people come in early on, so that, and because there's this idea of getting people on board with the idea, right? You can have like the best tools and this framework such as this, but if people don't take it seriously, they're not excited about it, then it won't get used. And then what's the point of anything? And so one thing that I like about a lot of this are the rocks, right? The 90-day goals and priorities, because and that's kind of how by accident I operate, right? Because we like, there's the people talk about these 1-year goals that they never take seriously, and the next year they start over, and then like a week or two seems to not be enough time to get something done, but 90 days seems to be in a sweet spot kind of territory. So why is it 90 days, not 45 days or 120? And what does that look like? Like, is it broken down further? Do you revisit it along the way? Like, what's the sort of 90-day goal idea like?
So, first of all, there's like 50 things I want to respond to that you said.
Once again, right?
Right, exactly. So, but let me answer your first question, which is the 90-day world. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a
One
time.
bite at a time.
Right. So we set our annual goals, and then we say, okay, what are we doing this quarter? And the reason it's 90 days is research shows that every 90 days, people start to lose focus, they start to fray, and they start to get on each other's nerves. And I've discovered that with my stores. Like, I used to have to tell the store manager the same thing every 3 months. And I've actually discovered that with my husband. I have to remind him the same thing every 3 months. So I was happy to hear that it's proven by research. So it's research based. So we're breaking down your bigger goals into 90-day goals. We come back together as a team. What did we learn? What are we going to do next quarter? We check in every single week. Are your rocks on track or off track? If they're off track, what do we need to do to get them back on track? So we're checking in every single week. So rocks are goals, but that's breaking your bigger tasks, your annual goals, into quarterly rocks. The other thing I want to make sure you know is there's the weekly scorecard. What are the activities you need to do every single week? So if you're a salesperson, how many sales calls do you need to make? How many meetings do you have to have? How many proposals do you have to have out? So between your weekly scorecard, the repetitive actions you need to do every single week, and your rocks, which you then break up into, my better teams break them up into what I call rock planners or project plans. What are you getting done every 2 weeks? You know exactly what you need to do. So there's the repetitive tasks, and then there's the projects that you're moving forward. But the one thing that you said that I don't want to lose, because it's what I struggle with the most, and I feel like it's so important, is discipline. So much of success is discipline, consistency, and discipline. Like, I know I want to lift weights 3 days a week. Like, getting there, it's so hard to do it. And what we do is we stay with our clients for a period of 2 years, because I could teach really cool stuff that they could learn, but they won't do it unless I'm there to hold them accountable. So I think so much of the magic is in the discipline and holding people accountable.
And what is the secret to discipline? I feel like when my son was born, I became a different person. I felt like I joined the military or something, right? Suddenly there were all these things like I had to do. It didn't matter if I didn't feel like it, if I didn't want to. There were things I had to do. And that momentum, and then the sort of support system of, like, there was my wife and there was him, and there was that combination, right, of momentum plus support system really helped me with the discipline and the routine. But what would you say are these secrets to discipline and just being consistent, getting things done?
That's a question I ask myself every day. So one thing I believe is getting really clear on your why. Why is this important to you? So that's number one, and reminding yourself of the why. Tony Robbins says life is 20% mechanics, 80% psychology. And so the first thing I do before I do anything new is I have my list of whys. So when it gets bad, I go back to it. I think that's number one. Number two is getting really clear on what are you doing. So you reminded me, one of my friends once came to me and said, Amy, I'm a terrible husband. I said, really? Why? I said, what does a good husband look like? And, we went through a whole process back and forth. I said, let's create a scorecard. So we decided a good husband was he ate dinner with his wife 4 days a week. He complimented her, 6 days a week. He spent 20 minutes solely focused on her, whatever it was. So getting clear on what you're doing. And then I think, in addition to the why, I think the accountability. I think having somebody hold you accountable. So in EOS, we have that scorecard. What do you have to do every week? And then once a week in your weekly meeting, you have to report, are you on track or you're off track? And if you're off track, why? So I think it's a combination of all of those things. And it's hard. And I'm a big fan of James Clear, his book, Atomic Habits. He's got some other things. Set yourself up, set up a system around yourself that makes it easy. So there's a whole bunch of other things that attach to habits. But those are the three things that I do. I also block time in my calendar. I'm very into time blocking. So it's complicated. But even with all that, and I focus on it all the time, I'm finally, just now, after having on my rocks every single quarter and on my scorecard, finally lifting weights 3 days a week.
Wonderful. You crack the code against yourself and you know yourself. And like when I think about James Clear, one of the things that sticks in my mind a lot about him was him saying like, well, choose like where you'll do the work. And like there's been the last few days I had to wake up early and get some writing done for something specific. And I said, for some reason, when I sit on the blue couch with my feet up with the laptop, I don't get any writing done. But if I sit on the red couch, like facing this way, somehow I get like half an hour done. And when I sit out on the front porch, get another half an hour done. It's weird, isn't it? How you figure out like just these various tools, like putting it in the calendar, having the scorecard, having the accountability. And we've all heard of these things, but I doubt that the majority of the population tests out or cycles or rotates through the tools in the toolbox and is honest with himself to know like what can I do, how do I know when it's not working, and what can I kind of pile in and set myself up for success. That's wonderful to think about, and I love the concept that you have there of the list of whys. And so I sort of want to implement that for myself, like so that way I can refer back to it when the going gets tough. And so as far as your list of whys, is it like 10 whys, or like to give us an idea, can you share like one or two of what the whys are?
Well, like I do it for everything. I do it for everything. Like that
Okay.
when I'm taking on something seriously, I do it for everything. But like health, which I'm taking on right now, is I had this realization that I'm 60. So the quality of the next 20 years of my life, the number one factor is going to be health. So why? I want to be energetic. I want to be around for my grandchildren. I don't want to be like the complaining grandmother. I don't want my kids to have to take care of me. I want to continue working. I love helping people. So those are all whys for something like that. My why for my EOS business is I didn't want to work for anybody anymore. I don't want to be the CEO anymore. I love helping people. And those are just some things that come up. But whatever they are, and I really go back to my whys when I'm having a bad day. Like, oh yeah, because inevitably you're going to have a bad day. And
Right. So have
it's,
those things to
yeah,
fall back on so you don't drift. Wonderful.
yeah, yeah.
And so that kind of leads me to wanting to know more about your journey, because you've done something that's really smart and really cool, right? A lot of people they want to reinvent the wheel, or maybe someone says, "Hey, EOS, I'll make my own knockoff of that." But then there's many times in my career when I said, "Hey, somebody has this course or the software and I want to be the implementer," right? Someone like buys the software and then I want them on like the download or the fulfillment to say, "Hey, this guy Robert, he'll will get it set up for you." And it's a really needed service because information is everywhere, right? Like we're on a podcast out of how many millions? There's
Right.
how many more hundreds of hours of YouTube videos are uploaded every second. How like there's infinity in your pocket. There's Chat GPT. We're drowning in information, and a lot of it's good ideas, but there's only so many hours in the day, and we need to get things done. And so my understanding of you is that you're an EOS implementer, because we could talk. There's so many YouTubes about EOS, and they're like 5 hours long on like a YouTube video, so we can learn about EOS. But it's way cooler and more helpful and moves the needle to actually implement it. So how does this relate to what you do as an EOS implementer?
Well, it's the consistency and the habit. There's knowing information, and then there's practically using the tools and the consistency of it. So what I find when people do it themselves, which if you can't afford it, is fantastic, and there's a ton of information. And start with the book Traction, which outlines everything. But really, very often people are using the tools wrong. And there's something very powerful about a facilitator in a room. So, like when we talk about identifying, discussing, and solving problems, what happens, and I always laugh because it's my smartest, billionaire clients who got 1600 on their SATs, a problem comes up, sales are off. And they say, all right, let's run a marketing campaign. They jump to solve. Well, has the sales guy made any phone calls? Is he the right person in the right seat? What's his pitch? Like there might be 17 other problems. So the discipline of going to what is the root cause of the issue is a very hard discipline. You need somebody to hold you accountable. And then the whole team dynamic thing. You'll have the one guy who is constantly talking and telling everybody what to do. But the quiet guy in the corner might actually have the answer. And that person, they may just give in because they don't have the energy to fight the big personality. So they're just like, oh, I'll do it your way. Or they care more about the relationship than they do about being right. I had a partner, and I discovered very recently that what drives him is harmony. And he would often give in to me because I have a strong personality. And I discovered that he was giving in to me because the relationship was more important than being right. I'm like, don't ever do that again. I'd rather know you're giving in and say, I don't agree. But there are people who are just giving in. So having that facilitator, making sure everybody's voices are heard, and it's the discipline. So if you can afford it, then of course you should self-implement, but an implementer makes a lot of difference. And you graduate, we're not there forever. It's usually 2 years, but it's a great process. And I think you get paid back exponentially. Every one of my clients are doing significantly better. Bottom line, top line, their lives are better. They've gotten rid of people on their teams who were holding them back. It's a big difference.
It's like, imagine going to school and being in a class and having a teacher and taking assignments and all that versus like a correspondence school or just learning from a book or learning from being in the library. I mean, I guess you could do it, but one of these paths has a lot more success, is faster, is more pleasant. That seems a lot more logical. And so what do these 2 years look like? Is it in person, remote, recurringly? Is there like different tiers? Is there like a price range?
So we we have a proven process how it works. It's depending on when you start, about 6 days a year over 2 years, typically. So we meet quarterly. We're available as much as teams need us between sessions. So in the beginning, my teams talk to me a lot. As they really get good at it, they they don't call me as much, which I actually start to miss them. But, that's success. That's when I know they're doing it. It's like your kids. You're supposed to raise them. If your kid's calling you every day, you got a problem. So it's a 2-year process. Some people really want to graduate because they don't like spending the money. I have some teams that, don't seem like they're ever graduating. They like having the facilitator. They could afford me, so they stay forever. Some people then move I do their annual meetings. It really depends on the team. And the price ranges depending on implementers. So probably from $30,000 to $75,000 a year. Implementers range in price from $3,500 to $12,000, depending on experience, location, life experience. We all teach the same thing. You have to match. You're deciding on two things. You're deciding on EOS and you're deciding on the implementer.
Well, wonderful. This seems like something that we need. And as far as this podcast is called the Scaling Secrets Podcast, we want to make sure that in these last few minutes, we we fit in some of those secrets about scaling. And so what do you have to share with us? I mean, other than if EOS is right for you, you should implement it because it's a wonderful, simple, and practical framework. But what in all of your adventures and misadventures and companies and people, what do you have to share with us about what we should and can and will do to scale our businesses?
Well, I think the number one thing is what you referred to in the beginning is you have to get the right leadership team, the right people in the right seats on your leadership team, and you have to be healthy. You have to be able to have tough conversations, passionate debates, and you have to really have a healthy team. When I look at teams that are healthy versus not healthy, it's night and day. I'm working with a team and they got rid of one of their leaders who was just toxic, and the business is flying now. For the first time, they made a significant profit. The other thing that's different is we're not talking about drama every single meeting. We're talking about real business issues and how to move the business forward. So I really believe getting the right leadership team and making sure you're healthy. And healthy is hard. It's never like I get to say to my husband, oh, I was nice to you, done, check that. It's constant work. It's hard and it's constant work, and it could disappear in a second. So that's another big piece of what we do. And I think it's the hardest piece of what I do, helping these teams stay healthy. So I'd say get the right leadership team, stay healthy, and then, the rest, I think a great leadership team could do anything.
I love this term healthy because it's one word, but for me it means like six different positive things, right? To me, healthy means that we're tracking the data and we have somewhat of a simple dashboard. We know when things are going well, and healthy to me means that the people are working together, as you mentioned, a non-toxic workplace. And then when you think about healthy in the sense of, say, like you lifting weights, health is temporary. It's something that you need to continue going, right? You need to
That's a great
be
analogy. I never
communicating
thought of
with your
that.
spouse.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you. I'm going to use that in my sessions if you don't mind.
Feel free. Like just whenever you mentioned healthy, I was just my brain came alive with all the cool metaphors. And so yeah, we need a healthy business and we should implement EOS to get it. And even more than that, we need an implementer. That way we're not just stuck in book learning. And so how does someone take that next step? How do they start that conversation with you, contact you, figure out what's possible into the future?
By the way I started to lift weights finally I'm lifting weights 3 days a week is I hired a coach.
Of course.
So
Yes.
I never got there on my own, despite it being on my goals every year. Uh,
And just despite knowing what you had to do, right? You knew in your brain what you had to do, but you just needed someone to help you.
it's the discipline. It's the discipline.
Yeah.
It's all about that's where I fall down, but I'm not going to fall down this time. As far as reaching out, there are a lot of EOS implementers. You could go to the website. I'm happy to speak to anyone. My name's Amy Holtz, amy.holtz, HOLTZ at eosworldwide.com. And I'm happy to help you find somebody who's for you if you're not in my location. That's really the first step. Reach out to EOS, reach out to me. Did you have another question that I didn't answer?
Well, I will in a moment, but I want to make sure that to send people on their way, and then we'll ask one last question and we'll send people again. So amy.holtz at eosworldwide.com. And my final question here to wrap things up is the sound bites in podcasts are what are really fun, right? Those little final tiny nuggets. And so I like to put my guest on the spot a little bit and ask them about a fun quote or lesson that has helped them, that can help us. So what comes to mind to you as far as a quote or lesson?
Don't let your insecurities get in the way of you achieving your potential or what you're here to do. I fight my insecurities. Whatever I acknowledge them, I get help. I do not let them get in my way. So I worked for a nonprofit and I said when I started, there are two things I'm never doing, fundraising or speaking in public. Then I realized it was my only way to achieve what I wanted to achieve. So I got speaking coaching, I got fundraising coaching, and I forced myself to do it. Don't let your insecurities get in the way of reaching your potential.
Very nice, very inspiring. Get it done, do the hard things. And the first step in getting that help is contact amy.holtz at EOS Worldwide. And go ahead, do it right now. And Amy will be excited to be speaking with you. So thank you very much, Amy, for stopping
Thank you.
by.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Robert.